welcome to the Sports Guys. This week we are going to be coming to you to talk to you about the NFL draft and the wrap-up show. We talked to you last week about the preview, and we gave you all the things that going into the draft that we thought were going to be important, who the best players were going to be in each of the rounds, who we thought the quarterbacks were going to be that were taken first, and the running backs, etc. And this week we're going to tell you what actually happened and what the results were of the draft. How you doing, Robbie?
I'm doing great, thanks. Doing really well. Super busy these days. Loving it, though.
That's good. What were your
Yeah.
takeaways from this weekend's draft? All 3 days I thought were pretty exciting in their own way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the conventional wisdom is that this is a weaker draft than previous drafts, last couple anyway. Not sure I believe that. I definitely think there were a lot of good players in this one, and I believe that it's not in the traditional positions necessarily where you focus a lot of your attention. But if you're going to tell me that, somebody like Ashton Genty is not going to have a big impact, I just,
Yeah.
I think he is. And so people are saying, it's weak when a running back gets picked that high. And then you're like, well, look at what Saquon Barkley added to the Eagles, So I think there's a lot of talent in this draft. I think it may be deeper than people think. I think the 5th round was awesome.
I think it lacked star power, though. It didn't have nearly the stars in every round that it usually does. And what it had, though, I thought it was like a workman draft. It was essentially like, if you look at the first 3 rounds, it was mostly defensive tackles, edge, and offensive tackles. It was a lot of line. And so it felt like a workman's draft. It really did, like a blue-collar draft. And you had a little bit of exciting players around the edges, but for the most part, everybody was taking care of their lines.
But this might be heavier in defensive line and offensive line than normal. Right. And a lot of times offensive linemen have longer careers, They just kind of come in and hang around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver. I heard some stat where something like 50% of the first round picks are out of the league within 2 years.
That's right.
So, if you're picking wide receivers, but if you're picking offensive linemen, they're probably going to be in the league still.
I was impressed with the depth of the draft at the line positions. I mean,
absolutely.
to me, most of these teams got at least 3 and maybe 4 starters.
The only position,
that's all you're looking for. You're looking for those first 3 or 4 rounds to be starters, and then everybody after that is for depth. You're trying to build the depth behind the starters. And
the only position I didn't think was really widely represented. I don't think quarterbacks were quite as strong as they have been, and linebackers. I didn't think the linebackers were all that great, but defensive ends, defensive tackles, corners, safeties, they were all there, and there were a lot of them.
Although there were a lot fewer DBs taken this time than previous drafts,
good amount of corners,
including safeties.
Good amount of corners. There were some safeties too. Safety wasn't quite as represented as corner, but there was a lot of corners in this draft, and I just felt like the biggest positions not represented that well were quarterback, maybe a little bit light, and linebacker.
There's a panel that was talking about Ashton Genty and why he went the earliest that any running back has gone in 22 years at number 6. And they said essentially that if he hadn't had the Oregon game last year, that he would have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick. But that, because they said essentially he plays in a conference that's not very well respected. He's playing against a bunch of lines and linebackers that are not very good. He's, D1 talent playing against not a very good conference. But they said that what opened everyone's eyes, especially the scouts, and what opened the eyes of the Heisman Trophy voters was the Oregon game, where he absolutely dominated.
Yeah, they were talking to the coaches, and they said that they were surprised at not that he had good moves and stuff, but that their guys looked so slow trying to tackle him.
Right.
They couldn't believe, how quickly he could get away from their tacklers.
Yeah. He had 210 yards. A lot of it was after contact. He was breaking tackles.
He's a bowling ball.
A couple touchdowns, and against a really great D1, top 4 type team. So
Yeah.
it's amazing to think about. He goes number 6, and he essentially cast his entire career on one game.
I
Because
wouldn't
a
say
lot of
that
a
though.
lot
He had a lot of home runs against decent teams.
okay teams, but what they're saying is that you have to really look at the competition that he was playing on a weekly basis. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I personally don't agree with
he was
them. I'm telling you what the panel
dominating
is saying.
that mediocre competition, dominating it.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder if he had that kind of year if he had been in the Big Ten or the SEC. That's what they're saying against lines where there is no holes, that kind of thing.
well, but he would have been behind the best offensive lineman in the country. So,
True.
I tend
True.
to think he'd be okay.
I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm so glad he went high, and I think he's going to have a huge impact in the NFL. And I
You
think the Raiders made a huge choice there. I'm really
you
happy,
te
but
you telling me he's running behind, Alabama or Georgia's offensive line? He's not gonna have holes?
I'm a huge Ashton Genty fan. I'm really rooting for him and want him to
The
do great.
point on it is that there was a lot of talent in this draft. There was a
Mhm.
lot of running backs. There was just a lot of positions, but not a lot of
There was.
quarterbacks. So everyone thinks it's not a good draft. That's just not a fair assessment, I don't think.
True, true. So the big story, of course, coming out of the draft is Shadeur Sanders, who was projected to be a top 5 pick and had been over the course of 2 years and had been groomed by his NFL all-time great father. Really dominated his division. Did really well in terms of the stats last year. Had 3,700 yards and 32 touchdowns, and just did great. But again, maybe against subpar competition because he wasn't
Yeah.
playing in the Big Ten or the SEC. And there was some criticism about his weak arm and a bunch of other things that maybe he didn't measure up against some of the other prospects. But they figured that his NFL, pedigree would carry him over the finish line, that he would be one of those top choices. Of course, right before the draft happened, they were saying he might drop all the way down to number 21 for the Steelers. So what were your thoughts about this incredible fall by Shadeur all the way to the 5th round? It almost felt like the Browns were being pressured to take him so that he wouldn't fall into the undrafted categories.
Well, the Browns were not pressured to take him, but I think the big mistake was assuming he was gonna be a top 5 pick. I mean, there wasn't all that much evidence of that. There was no team that was in love with him. He had a terrible offseason. He had bad pro day. He had terrible interviews. His dad was acting like the biggest diva in the world, like LaMelo Ball or something.
Yeah, like basically,
We're
I'm
not
not going
playing
to.
for this team. We're not playing for that team.
Right.
So he became a nightmare dad. And Dion could always get away with that because he was the talent. He was better than everyone else, so people would put up with it. But Shadeur's not better than everyone else. He doesn't dominate his position like Dion dominated his. He'll never be on that level at the quarterback position versus Dion at the corner position. You can act like a diva when you back it up, but Shadeur should have been thought of as a 2nd or 3rd round at best. And if he had interviewed well and said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and worked really hard in the pro day and not said I won't play here and I won't play there, probably would have gone in 2nd or 3rd by talent wise. But he put off some teams, and there weren't that many teams that needed a quarterback this year. Everyone got theirs last year. And the whole design was not to need one this year because there was a lot of question mark quarterbacks. I think there are going to be some good quarterbacks that come out of this draft, but I think they're a little bit of a roll of the dice. So all that added up to saying, nah, pass. Everyone passed. And it
Mhm.
makes sense why they did. It really does. I think I don't blame the teams one bit for letting his value reach where his real potential was.
Even if you didn't have Deion Sanders in the picture, which I do think hurt him because of the
Mhm.
whole entourage and everything and the helicopter dad, but
Yeah.
even if you didn't, he had a lot of very bizarre behavior leading up to the draft, including asking them to play the game of Catan and not wanting to
Yeah.
answer questions. And apparently he got really sensitive when they showed him a couple of negative plays that he had with Colorado. He got really upset about it. At one point, he stormed out of the room. So he just, I don't know. I thought he was a very mature person, but I think the more and more I read, he really acted in a very immature way
Do you
during
remember how
during the
Cam
process.
Cam Newton was when he arrived in the league?
Mhm.
he was clean cut and normal and dressed normally and said, "I want to be the face of the franchise," and really
Mhm.
acted like it.
Mhm.
He got along with everybody. He was likable. America could get behind him. He really had a great advisors around him, and he was listening. And then he got weirder and weirder and weirder with the weird clothes and the strange behaviors, and he started to become off-putting for a lot of people. Shadeur was a lot closer to late Cam than early Cam. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
how it struck me. Just people are kind of like, we don't want all that. And he didn't have the strong arm to make you say, I'll put up with it. He was a question mark. His arm strength was
Mhm.
very questionable. He had good leadership intangibles,
Mhm.
but if you're going to act strangely and unpredictably, you can't be the face of the franchise, which makes you a backup. If
Right.
you're not the face of the franchise, you're a backup at quarterback. And so if you're a backup quarterback, you're not getting picked in the first 3 rounds, most likely,
That's right.
unless you're Atlanta last year. But most of the time, quarterbacks who get picked in the first round are going to be on the field.
As soon as the Saints passed on him at 9 and the Steelers passed on him at 21, it was over. He was
Mm-hmm.
essentially gonna slide down into the backup category.
Backup. Yep.
And then thirdly, the Giants traded back up into the first round. Everyone said, "Oh, here it comes. Here comes Shadeur Sanders." And instead, they took Jackson Dart, which a lot of people thought he was the guy they wanted because he has the strong arm. So when those three things happen, you had an idea he was going to fall. And
Yeah, it
they,
was the league declaring him a backup. That's pretty much what happened. And you know what? This might be the best thing that ever happened to him because they're kind of.
well, no, he ends up going to the Browns,
I'm
and
sorry.
he's the second guy taken by the Browns in this draft. So
Yeah,
now he enters a room with 5 quarterbacks.
he went to a team that has too much competition.
Yeah,
You know,
because now the CFL Toronto Argonauts have just taken an option on him because they're predicting that he's not going to
yeah,
make the roster.
yeah.
He's not going to make the Browns.
He'll need
And,
to
and
he'll need to beat out 2 other quarterbacks.
yeah, and so they're saying the Toronto Argonauts think he's going to come play in the CFL. And if he does, they've got his rights now. So pretty interesting. We'll see what happens if
Mhm.
he decides he wants to be on a practice squad or if he wants to go to the CFL. But have you ever seen a precipitous fall like this before in the
Yeah,
draft?
because I don't think he actually fell. I think the expectations were wrong.
Hmm.
You know, do I think that the pundits got it more wrong than usual? Yeah, yeah, they did. But I don't think he fell from pretty much where he should have been.
What about all the anger from all these, draft experts? They were visibly angry on the air every time he kept going past another round, not getting picked, talking about the NFL botched this and the GMs botched this, and he's getting railroaded. And there was a lot of emotion. I thought that was really interesting. I thought, draft day is really, the teams are going to get the best players that help their team. This isn't a personal thing, and a lot of those anchors were taking it really personally.
Well, what I'll say is, I think that the draft having less star power than normal made the storylines a little less abundant. So they had to kind of beat a couple of stories to death because there was not much else to talk about because most everyone else kind of picked the right pick. I mean, the Steelers getting a defensive end and the Cowboys getting their offensive lineman in the first round. And these are all kind of really good picks that you can't really argue with. I mean, they're not sexy and they don't really move the needle, but
Hmm.
these are building block decisions that are smart. And
Hmm.
so they pay off in the long run. And
True.
the Lions paid the bill a couple of years ago when they were picking all these linemen, and everyone thought it was crazy. And now look at their offensive line.
Hmm.
Um, you pay the bill first, and then you eat your dinner. You know,
That's right.
and paying the bill means drafting positions that aren't as sexy and aren't as attractive. But when it comes due and you make your Super Bowl run, you're really glad you have your, Galen Greenlaws and your, you
Hmm.
know, Cam Chancellors and,
That's
all these
true.
skill players that really make a difference.
So the second biggest story coming out of the draft was Quinn Ewers, who a year before had been projected as a top 5 pick, and he almost came out, and then he got lured to come back to Texas, even though they already had Arch Manning, for a $4.5 million NIL deal, the biggest at the time. And so he took the $4.5 million, comes back, has a pretty good beginning of the year. They end up, sitting at 9-0, and then he proceeds to lose to Georgia twice down the stretch, and really looked very ineffective and kind of indecisive in those 2 games. And he slid and slid and slid, even worse than Shadeur Sanders, and ends up going in the 7th round of the Dolphins as kind of an afterthought. What are your thoughts about Quinn Ewers? Should he have gone back? Because he could have gone back for even more money in NIL. They were talking about maybe going to Ohio State.
What's interesting is a lot of people, the same people who are freaking out about NIL, moving all these people around. Oh, they're just doing it for money. It's the end of the college football as we know it, and it's the end of the world for these guys, and they're all spoiled brats. And then you finally have a case where somebody didn't do it for the money, but is chasing their dream. We should be applauding Ewers. Everybody should be celebrating this guy.
I think they're just looking at he turned
anti-NIL like nightmare, and everybody's criticizing him for it. Like, he's chasing a dream. He doesn't care about the money as much. He thinks he's betting on himself, and I applaud him for
I do too.
taking a hit,
But the story is that he could have had $8 million at Ohio State, and he
Fair.
turned it down, and now he's going to make $800,000. So
But the same people writing that story are going around the country criticizing this guy for transferring to that school for more money, and this guy for transferring to that school for more money. And Quinn Ewers is leaving and going to take less money and chase his NFL dream. How dare he not chase the money?
But
there's some complete lack of consistency here that I can't quite get my mind around.
Let's separate that all out. And let's say you're his father or you're his agent. Do you think it was a smart deal, or do you think he should have gone back to college and tried to rectify what he didn't do this year, which is to lead Texas to a very deep playoff run?
I think
Texas or somebody else.
I think it was smart, unless he was going to transfer somewhere he was comfortable, because you couldn't stay at Texas and have Arch Manning breathing down your neck. The first time you throw a pick, they're screaming for Arch Manning to go in, and then you lose your starting job, and then you have no shot at the NFL. Jalen Hurts is an outlier. When you get replaced, you're done. And I don't know how Jalen Hurts got all the way to where he got highly paid as a starting quarterback on a Super Bowl winning team. That's a tremendous story, but it doesn't happen often. You get replaced by Arch Manning and you're toast. So he had to transfer out. And he probably looked at his options and said, I don't like it. I'd rather chase my dream and bet on myself. So I tip my hat. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the risk that he was taking. But he said, I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to chase my dream. And I'm done with college, and hopefully I have good enough tape.
Do you think he can make the Dolphins roster? I mean, he's going to be QB3, it looks like, because Wilson's 2.
I do think so. I think he'll be QB3, which would be a perfect spot for him for 1 or 2 years. I don't know what's going to happen with Wilson. You never know. He's young. Didn't have a great start to his career. Was pretty well liked in Colorado, but wasn't there very long. So I think he's still in the early part of his career where he could blossom and kind of take over a starting role somewhere down the line. I don't predict that, but he could potentially beat out Zach Wilson also to become the backup. And then Tua gets hurt a lot. So I could easily see a pathway for him to find his way into the starting role.
Yeah.
Week 6, week 8, whatever.
So a success story that came out of the draft was Cam Ward, goes number 1. Yeah. This is the guy who was a 0-star recruit out of high school. And he goes to the Pac-12 and works his way up through the Pac-12 and was, a decent quarterback, but Miami took a flyer on him. He only had 1 year left of eligibility. And he comes in, and from the opening snap of the season until the end was the most exciting player in football, other than Travis Hunter, of course. And was the number 3 ranked guy in the Heisman Trophy voting, just lit up the scoreboard the entire year. And so what are your thoughts about Cam Ward's rise? Because he had kind of the opposite story from Shadeur and Ewers.
I was happy about Cam Ward. I wasn't really sure. I felt a little bit like he was a little overrated. I think in other quarterback classes, he would have been 5th or 6th best quarterback.
I agree with that.
But I feel good about him. Like, I think we're looking at an NFL starter there. But he's a smooth quarterback with good pocket awareness, really excellent intangibles. He's got a quick release, and he moves around in the pocket really well. He had nice weapons at Miami, but a lot of them are undrafted free agents, and it's not like they were all first-round picks. He wasn't surrounded by Georgia's talent or something like that.
That's right.
Miami had a nice season because of Ward, and almost exclusively that. Their defense was non-existent. So I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't know if he should be the number 1 pick in most drafts.
I agree. Yeah. He's also going to sell a lot of tickets.
I would have taken Travis Hunter, but
yeah. Actually, several panelists were saying that Travis Hunter was by far the best player in this draft. It wasn't close. He's a generational talent.
Yeah.
So, and you saw what the Jaguars did. Of course, they ended up trading up from 5 to 2 to go get Travis Hunter to help Lawrence on both sides of the ball. I personally think they might have overpaid a little bit for him. They only moved up 3 spots. The Browns moved down 3 spots, and the Browns pick up the Jaguars' number 1 pick next year. So I don't know. It might have been a little bit rich, but if he ends up being the talent that we think he's going to be, it may be worth it. We'll see.
Browns won that trade, no question.
I think so. Unless Travis Hunter becomes the greatest cornerback of all time or something like that. We'll have to see.
All I'm saying is if I had the number 1 pick and didn't have to give anything up.
That's right.
If I'm Tennessee, I'm taking Travis Hunter.
How long do you think they're going to allow him to play both ways?
There's a bunch of ways they could do it. I personally think it's harder to not be a corner and just go in at corner than it is to go in at wide receiver and do a route. So I think if they're going to be heavy on one side or the other, you have to keep him in at corner so he doesn't get rusty. He doesn't get burned. And he gets hand movements down and his footwork and all that stuff. And then use him some at wide receiver,
When they evaluated him as just a wide receiver only, he wasn't even in the top 10 in this draft. So I think he's.
I find that hard to believe because he was highly rated and he had great stats. He had incredible jumping off the page.
He was ranked something like the 15th best receiver in this draft, according to the experts, the people that do this for a living, whereas he was by far the number 1 cornerback. So
I have trouble believing that because when I think about all the wide receivers, there weren't a tremendous number in this draft. There were last year.
Right.
There aren't 15 better than him in my mind. There's a tiny handful better than him, maybe.
He's really exciting. You talk about guys going to sell tickets in Jacksonville. It's going to be really fun to watch him. I can't wait.
He's great.
Let's go take a look at the draft results.
Let's do it.
All right, let's take a moment to call out our sponsor for tonight, and that is DraftKings. We are so excited to partner with DraftKings. Rob and I both have used the interface and placed small bets over the last year since it's been legal in the state of North Carolina. It's a great interface. I love the app. I love placing small bets on games that make it a little bit more exciting. What do you think of DraftKings, Robbie?
The same. I like to do a little bit of hockey, a little bit of basketball. I don't do huge parlays, but I know that a lot of people have fun with that. There's a lot of different ways you can use it, and I think it's really versatile, and it does add a lot of spice and juice to a fun game that you're watching. And I think it's a really cool thing. I know that it's relatively new, couple years where it's been completely legal in most states, and I think it's gone over so well. And uh, being sponsored by them is really, really cool.
It is fun, isn't it, just to have a little bit of juice on the game, maybe $20. It just gives it that little
Yeah,
extra, you know?
yeah. It makes you sit on the edge of that, tied late in the game. It just feels like you're really invested.
Or you have an over and you're 1 point away, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's exciting. So guys, check out DraftKings app. You can download it from the App Store or whatever phone that you have and put it on your iPad, your computer, or you can go to DraftKings.com and you can set up your account. And they have a match program right now. If you put $100 in, they will match you up to $100. So you can't beat
That's a
that.
really good deal.
Yeah, check it out. And we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
All right, so this is our NFL Draft Wrap-Up show. This is our episode 61. Look at a couple epic pictures here. You got Cam Ward going number 1. You see the great picture there with him and Goodell. And then down below, Ashton Jeanty, his pre-draft picture that he took. And, of course, he's the highest drafted running back in 22 years, goes to the Raiders at number 6, which is pretty cool to see. And, of course, as we said before, we're both big fans of his. Two of the guys who slid the most, as we just mentioned, Shadeur Sanders. You look at this incredible thing down below here. He spent $40,000 on a draft cave at his house, which is just, I mean, of all the bizarre behavior he did, this was one of the biggest, most bizarre ones. This draft cave he put together for the draft. The draft cave where you sit on the couch, there actually was embedded in the walls New York Giants cleats. So he was assuming he was going to go number 3 to the New York Giants. So you talk about a huge draft fail to spend $40,000 on this. And then, of course, Quinn Ewers, we mentioned, with his big slide down to number 7. So any other thoughts about these guys?
No, I think we've covered them. I think we covered them really well. Ward is a tremendous story. I think we kind of missed it. I think he was a very feel-good story about transferring and working hard and elevating his program and getting up to number 1. Like that's a really good story. And I think it got kind of overshadowed, unfortunately.
You know, there's only 2 zero-star recruits in college football that have ever gone number 1 in the NFL draft. Do you know who the other one was?
No.
Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield was a zero-star recruit, ends up winning the Heisman Trophy and goes number 1 to the Browns. And then, of course, Cam Ward is number 2 now. Zero-star recruit to go number 1. Pretty incredible. What a rise.
Yeah.
From where he came from. So let's look at some of the other big stories here. Shadeur Sanders, of course, takes the stunning fall to number 5 and lands in that crowded QB room in the Browns with 5 different QBs on the roster. You got Deshaun Watson, you have Flacco, you have the new Dylan Gabriel being the 3rd round pick for them. You also have Kenny Pickett, who they signed in the offseason for a 1-year deal. He's coming off his Super Bowl win with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then you also have Shadeur Sanders. So, you know, to me, you have 5 guys and likely only 3 of them are going to make the roster. Looks like Deshaun Watson is going to go on the PUP list for the year. He's not going to play this year. So they're going to pay him $40 million to not play again. But that means out of the 4 that are left, one of those guys is going to be the odd man out. And we'll just have to see. It'll likely be down to Shadeur or Dylan Gabriel on who's going to get QB3. We'll see.
We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Pickett's left out.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a disappointing start to his career, and if he doesn't have a good camp, why would you keep somebody who's closer to having to sign their deal?
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's at the end of his rookie deal.
But if you're Stefanski, you know, and it was pretty clear that this 5th round pick for Shadeur was the owner really wanted him. The owner was pushing them to do it. And it looked like if you saw the after conference when they asked Stefanski about Shadeur, he almost rolled his eyes like he had been forced to do it because he really wanted Dylan Gabriel. He's the guy he worked out. And so there's already dissension within the ranks. And so if I'm Stefanski, I'm just going to open it up to competition. You got 4 guys in camp, and you basically tell them, hey, 3 are going to make it. Go for it, you know, give them all reps.
Yeah.
And just see how they come out.
But that's the problem because they break down the reps in a very methodical way. And does Flacco really need all those reps? I mean,
That's a good
he's your
point.
guy, and the other guys are your guy of the future.
Yeah, Flacco's going to be your starter, so that's
So
true.
you might give Flacco a little bit less
Yeah,
so that you can see the other guys and see what they're made of.
it's going to be interesting to see if Kenny Pickett can beat one of these guys out. It'll be very interesting to watch.
Yeah.
So next one is Jaguars trade up for Travis Hunter, giving a 2026 first rounder to the Browns. You think the Browns won this trade? I do too. I guess we won't really know for about 5 years if they really won it, because if Hunter is the generational talent, if he's the Hall of Famer, if he's the two-way player that we haven't seen since Dion, then maybe it was worth it to go up 3 spots and give up a first rounder. Typically, I don't like to do that, but Jacksonville saw something in him they just couldn't pass up.
Here's what I'd say. The likelihood of Hunter being good is higher than the likelihood of Jacksonville using that first round pick for something great.
Right.
So I would do this, but I would have tried to get Hunter without going up like that.
I mean, they could have gotten Hunter at 2 and given up the first rounder next year, or they could have gotten like a edge rusher at number 5. Like they were thinking to themselves, okay, what can we do to make a splash? We need to
Yeah.
sell tickets. Our franchise is so
Yeah.
downtrodden every year.
And let's face it, on a lot of levels, you're helping your offense and defense at the same time. That's
No,
a
that's
pretty
true.
special player.
That is
That's
true.
that's an impact player.
How many snaps do you think he can play a game? I mean, he's going to play every snap on defense, I think. And then on
Like
offense, you mix
like
them in, right?
40% of offense and 80% of defense, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I think that's right. So who is going to be the face of their franchise? Is it going to be Lawrence? Or is it going to be Travis Hunter?
I think it's got to be Lawrence, but you don't love it.
I think if you watch the NFL Sunday and you're looking at the advertisements, you're going to see Travis Hunter a lot more than Lawrence. That's what I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I think Hunter's got to do some special stuff first.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true. So this next one was really surprising. Colson Loveland is the first tight end off the board from University of Michigan.
Yeah.
They felt like even though Tyler Warren is the big receiving tight end, they felt like Colson Loveland is also a fantastic receiving tight end, and that he's a better blocker right now. And so apparently the Bears really liked him and liked his ability to block. They really want to run the ball this year. So this was a big surprise that people did not see this coming. They thought he might be second or third tight end off the board. So any thoughts there?
I was surprised. I would have taken Tyler Warren. I
Yeah.
felt like he was more of a threat and more of a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I'm not taking a tight end that early, unless he's some kind of special, Brock Bowers clone.
Mm-hmm. I think the Bears have been adding offensive pieces for 2 seasons now, and maybe they felt like they were one tight end away. I don't know.
And they might have felt like this guy has something special that they need. So,
But they already had a couple of really good tight ends on their roster, so I don't know. It was really interesting why they did this move. So next one was interesting. Buccaneers need defense, and yet their first pick was Emeka Egbuka, who apparently they fell in love with at the combine. And they're going to put him into a very crowded wide receiver room already. They already have a lot of great wide receivers. Any thoughts about why they would do this over?
I don't know, but I love this pick.
Yeah, I do too. He's
I love this
fantastic.
pick. I mean, he held the all-time Ohio State receptions record, and Ohio State has put in some amazing wide receivers. He
Is
runs
this
really
just,
good routes.
he was the best player on the board? I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like they were in the draft room. Look, the best guy on our board is Egbuka.
He's one of the few wide receivers this year in this draft that was NFL ready.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't as many as last year.
By the way, Egbuka almost came out last year, but he decided to come back and then wins a national championship. So
yeah,
I think he made the right choice.
Yeah.
Going into a great Buccaneers receiving core, and all I can say is Baker Mayfield is really going to cook this year, I think. I like the Buccaneers to win that division again, which they've done 3 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is interesting. The Packers also didn't really need a wide receiver. They have a really good receiving core, and they go ahead and take Golden at wide receiver on their day one. which was kind of surprising. That's not the need that everyone thought they had on the board, but I guess maybe they thought he was the best player on the board. So thoughts about adding another receiver to an already crowded receiver room for Jordan Love?
I mean, I think it's a good pick. You need to get Jordan Love help. They have a lot of nice young receivers. I don't know how many stars they have though. Like absolutely go-to players. Dontavian Wicks and guys like
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
are good players. I don't know if you have a shot at an elite receiver. I think you take it, and then you use your picks to shore up other places that you have needs. But I like the pick. I'm not sure he's the best person for
Some of
them
the
or them for him, but
some
it's
of
fine.
these receiver picks felt like they were placating their quarterbacks, that maybe the quarterbacks were having some input. I
Yep.
know the Panthers went for a wide receiver at number 8 that no one thought they would, and went ahead and got their kind of WR for the future in McMillan.
What
And
I'd say
apparently Bryce Young had a big input in that. They were asking him what he
what I
thought.
would say is all these wide receivers feel a little bit like a reach. Last year they were slam dunks, and this year they feel like, he'll probably be good. He'll probably be good. Like less certainty around
Mhm,
them as selections. So
mhm. These are gonna be good players, though, for a long
good
time, I think.
players. We'll see.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's right. So Giants, go ahead and take Abdul Carter at 3, the best defender in the draft, and then they trade back up into the first round at 24 and get Jackson Dart as their quarterback of the future. He's gonna be sitting behind Russell Wilson, who's signed with the Giants, so he, has some time to develop, but everyone thinks that if Wilson falters or gets hurt, Jackson Dart's gonna get some good playing time this year.
and Jameis.
And Jameis, yeah.
I think Jameis might be a very good help to him.
Mhm.
Somebody who can kind of mentor him a little bit. I'm not sure if Wilson has the people skills.
I don't think this was that
Kind of
surprising.
believe.
People were even talking about the Giants might trade down their 3rd pick to go get Jackson Dart later, um, and they like his big arm, and we talked about the bad weather in New York, that you need the big arm to cut through the bad weather, so do you like this pick for the Giants?
I think so. I think Dart is a raw talent who needs some work, but physically he's somewhere between Josh Allen and Bo Nix.
And they don't have to play him right away, which is a huge
Yeah.
deal.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so
He needs that development time.
I think he's gonna be a good pro one day.
Yeah.
I think you'll see him come forward with them. So Steelers do something really interesting. They pass on quarterbacks on day 1 and day 2 when they desperately need one, and they go ahead and take Will Howard late in the draft, who's really a developmental quarterback, and even his camp admits it apparently that they don't think he's ready on day 1 to start. So everyone was kind of scratching their heads about number 1, the Will Howard pick, and also how late it was, and also why did the Steelers pass on all the other guys who were available? So, what were your thoughts about that? And then I'll talk about something that came out today about one of the reasons it may be happening.
I think Will Howard's a good quarterback, potential prospect. I think he needs development time, but I could definitely see him being a pretty good gamble. I don't think they should have put all their eggs in that basket, but I don't blame them for going that route as a young potential quarterback. Um, but they're acting like they have already a decent quarterback option, and they really don't.
Well, they shipped out Wilson and they shipped out Fields,
Yeah,
and they draft Will Howard, who's not ready on day 1. But then today, the breaking news is Adam Schefter's reporting that Aaron Rodgers is very close to signing with the Steelers for a 2-year deal,
yeah.
40 million per.
A lot of
So
people have been saying that there's been a handshake agreement in place for some months or weeks, and that's why they did not pull the trigger. And I think it was actually a signal to Aaron Rodgers: if
yes,
we don't draft a quarterback that can compete with you, uh, will you sign with us? And he probably
right.
said, "I'll absolutely sign with you if you do not pick anyone who's a threat to me."
And then also, will you mentor Will Howard over the next 2 years? That's basically what he's gonna end up doing, is
Yes or
mentoring.
no? Like, who knows
Yeah.
what the deal is? But I think they sent a signal to him: we're not going to draft somebody that's a threat to you.
Right.
We're not going to do to you what they did with Jordan Love. So
So apparently the deal is they're going to make it very simple. It's 2 years, 80 million, all of it guaranteed. And he's taking essentially a hometown discount to finish off his career in Pittsburgh. So sounds like a pretty good deal for him and a pretty good deal for Pittsburgh. They don't have to
yeah, I think
max out.
it was a very big gamble not to have him under contract, but to act like you do that's a big gamble.
So do you think Will Howard is QB2, or do you think they're going to bring even maybe another, more senior guy in as QB2?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if Will Howard was too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, we'll see. It's going to be
I wouldn't
interesting.
be shocked if they went and got a veteran either, just to
That's what I'm thinking.
make things more solid in their quarterback room.
That's what I'm thinking. They'll probably go get another veteran.
Because you can't guarantee that Aaron Rodgers is going to want to mentor Howard. So you need somebody who can.
And what if Aaron Rodgers breaks his thumb in week 3?
Right.
Will Howard's not ready.
But you need a Joe Flacco or somebody, not him, but somebody like that who can say to Dart, all right, rookie, or Will Howard, all right, rookie, come with me. We're going out to dinner. We're going to talk about how you carry yourself and how,
Well, the other thing that was happening with the Steelers the 2 weeks leading up to the draft is they were negotiating with the Atlanta Falcons to see how much they wanted for Kirk Cousins, who's already under contract. And apparently the Falcons wanted too much. The Steelers didn't want to give up that much draft capital. So the Kirk Cousins deal didn't come together. So next one is Cleveland Browns take Dylan Gabriel over Shadeur Sanders. They take Gabriel in the 3rd round. Apparently they loved him from the very beginning. And one of the reasons they didn't take anybody in the 1st round is they knew they could get Gabriel in the 3rd. They worked him out privately twice. And Stefanski is completely in love with this guy and thinks he is the future of the franchise. So, after he said that in the post-conference, that's why my thought is that Sanders may be the odd man out unless he can figure out a way to beat out Kenny Pickett. We'll see. New Orleans Saints surprise everybody and take Tyler Show from Louisville, which was really interesting. He's the 3rd guy taken off the board after Jackson Dart. What is your thought about this pick for the Saints? And they're going to go with Tyler all the way.
I mean, I think it was an okay pick.
They're not sure Derek Carr can play this year, so he's probably going to get some significant action.
I think he's still a project, though, and I'm not sure they have time for that. So it's kind of messy.
That's my concern, is that they probably need another veteran if Derek Carr can't go. Are you just going to throw this guy in on week 1? I don't know.
No. They need a Gardner Minshew or something, somebody who could go in there and start if absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. It's going to be interesting to watch his development this year and see if he really can take on the starting role.
Yeah.
So next one is Judkins is selected over Henderson, the 2 Ohio State studs running backs. Everyone was not really sure which of these 2 was going to go first. I've seen a lot of people writing up that really they think Henderson may be the 2nd best back in this draft after Ashton Jeanty. And he's going to be a fantastic back. But I think Judkins can be really good too.
Yeah.
We talked about how deep this draft was for running backs. And any surprise that Judkins went over Henderson?
No, not really.
No. Judkins has a little more speed. Henderson has a little more power.
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess it just depends on what you were looking for as a team. I think they're both going to have excellent careers. So next one was Bryce Young is among the biggest winners from round 1 in the 2025 NFL draft. And this largely is because he got his wide receiver 1 in McMillan, and then he got 2 offensive linemen, and he got a tight end, a really good tight end. So they really seem to be continuing to try to build around Bryce Young and make him more and more successful. So what is your thought about this headline?
I like it. I like all those moves. I think that their offensive line was successful 2 years ago and then had a step backwards last year. I think they have a good potential to be better this year. And now you add in young young talent to push the veterans a little bit, and everyone kind of learns together, and you have depth. So the offensive line depth is going to be important as the season rolls along. And so when you're giving weapons like a tall receiver who's very athletic and with a short Bryce Young back behind this massive offensive line, and then you add a tight end, and so I think
And
Carolina's
a right tackle and a guard. So they got two offensive
they're
linemen as well.
making good moves to try and improve quickly.
That's right. And they got 2 edge. So they had a really solid draft.
Yeah.
So last one here is Kirk Cousins is stuck in Atlanta for 1 more year. Do you think that's completely true, or is there a possibility he might get dealt at the trade deadline or something like that?
I think he could get dealt.
I do too. I do too. I don't think he'll stay there the entire year. They did not
I don't
move
know
him
if he
in
will.
the
I don't
offseason.
know if he will get dealt, but he could.
So you now have a $40 million backup in Atlanta.
It's
It's making
crazy.
$42 million this year as a backup. So you can see why they desperately want to get rid of him. They just asked a little bit too much of the Steelers. Couldn't quite get it done. Some other stories. This one was interesting. We mentioned that the first pick in the first round was a 0-star recruit, and that's Cam Ward. The first pick in the second round was a former walk-on, which is pretty amazing. So any thoughts about this kind of don't give up on your dreams thought process?
There are a lot of nice stories here. I think some of them got missed and overshadowed by the fixation on the Shadeur drop, draft stock drop. But yeah, there were some nice stories.
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like Cam Ward could have been a much better story that everybody knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you think he got overshadowed by some of these negative stories? I
Yeah,
think so.
no
He,
question.
he should have gotten a lot more notoriety out of this, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah,
So
I
should
guess.
Travis Hunter.
Yeah, for sure. Those are 2 huge stories. Absolutely. This was interesting. The Titans round 1 QBs, they've had the most of any NFL franchise. They've had 5 number ones. Cam Ward, Marcus Mariota, Locker, Vince Young, and McNair. So 5 guys chosen number 1. And this is a franchise that continually tries to find their QB1 and continually struggles to do so. So do you think they finally did this time?
Hard to say. I'm not sure I believe in their organization as much. Their general manager is shaky. We'll
Like,
see.
you can see why they chose all these guys, though. It's not like it was, I mean, these guys were like top prospects during their years.
Yeah.
It's just somehow they haven't developed them into the stars they should have been. So it gives me a little bit of pause when it comes to Cam Ward and his success, because he went to the, lowly franchise, the Titans.
Yeah.
But I think they might have finally got their guy. I really think he's going to have a good career. He'd be
Very
solid.
possible.
Yeah. So Ewers, the biggest non-Shadeur storyline is Quinn Ewers should have entered the transfer portal instead of the draft. And we've beat this up a little bit, but what's your final thought on this?
I don't think so. I think he wanted to chase his dream and he felt like it was time. He's made some good money while he was in college, so go for it.
That's the one story they're not talking about is he made 4.5 last year. He's
Yeah,
not
got
broke.
money.
You know what I mean?
He's not broke.
Yeah. So, yeah, he wanted to take a crack at it. He didn't want to come back and play college anymore, and he's going to get his chance with the Dolphins. So we'll see. But I do think this is going to be an example for a lot of guys who are kind of right on that edge and maybe didn't have the season they wanted to, and it's going to force some of those guys to think about coming back. I really do.
No question.
They're going to look at Ewers and they're going to think to themselves,
You know,
or even
I saw an interesting story about how Ewers was one of the first NIL guys. He was one of the very first NIL guys.
Right.
And then he's going to be one of the last guys who takes the leap and fails. So he's made good money in NIL.
Well, think about this. You look at these two pictures. He was one of the first NIL guys, and Cam Ward was a 0-star recruit. Ewers was a 5-star recruit. Cam Ward goes 1, and Ewers barely gets drafted. So
Right.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, you think about that. It's not a perfect science. It's
No.
really not.
No, they were
And
talking about today on I think it was ESPN radio. They were talking about how a lot of times you go to camp and you end up watching the sixth round guy is better than the second round guy,
that's right.
and it's obvious, you know. So, um,
Hmm.
it's not a perfect science.
That's right.
It's an art form.
So let's look at the grades from the first round NFL draft pick. Of course, Cam Ward goes 1, Travis Hunter 2, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell. I thought that was a really excellent pick, offensive tackle for the
Yeah.
Patriots.
Hmm.
They've got something going there in New England, by the way. I really think they're going to be pretty good this year.
Decent.
Cleveland goes down to 5 from 2, but picks up another first-round pick, and they take Mason Graham, who we talked about was the best defensive tackle in this draft by far from Michigan. Raiders take their running back of the future, Ashton Genty. Jets go for a tackle to protect their future quarterback, Membo. He's a really solid guy.
He
And
had
then,
a
of
good
course,
combine.
Panthers listened to their quarterback. Bryce Young wanted them to go McMillan, and they did at 8. The Saints, everyone was waiting for Shadeur Sanders. He did not go, and instead they went offensive tackle. We talked about Loveland, the tight end, goes to the Bears at 10. That was a big surprise. The 49ers go for Mikael Williams. He's a really excellent edge rusher. He's going to be on the other side of Nick Bosa. Cowboys go Tyler Booker at guard. Really, really good prospect there. Your Dolphins go Kenneth Grant. He's a big run-stuffing defensive tackle. Real big, solid guy. The only concern with him, of course, is his weight. They said they're really going to have to watch his weight because he tends to get overweight pretty easily. Tyler Warren drops all the way to 14, which was a little surprising, goes to the Colts. So he's going to be an interesting tight end there. The Falcons take their first of 2 edge guys they take in the first round, Jalen Walker, really amazing player. I thought the Panthers might go for him at 8. Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle, really good player, goes to the Arizona Cardinals. Shamar Stewart, edge, goes to the Bengals. Grace Zabel to the Seahawks. Amuka Ibuka, who we talked about, at 19, goes to the Buccaneers. By the way, they gave them a C- there, not because Ibuka's not going to be a really good player, he is, but because they thought the Bucs didn't need a wide receiver.
Yeah, they needed defense.
Exactly. Barron, the cornerback, goes to the Broncos to shore up their defense. Derek Harmon, defensive tackle, to the Steelers. You know, they always are building their defense all the time. This was a great pick right here. Number 22, Hampton from North Carolina, goes to the Chargers. It becomes the running back at Los Angeles, and you can just imagine what that team is going to do with him. I just think that's a fantastic pick for the Chargers at 22.
I agree.
Golden, the wide receiver, goes to the Packers. Donovan Jackson, a guard, goes to the Vikings. Jackson Dart, of course, the Giants go back up into the first round to get Jackson Dart. This next pick was very head-scratching. The Falcons gave up several picks to go back up into the first round from the second round to go get their second edge rusher, James Pierce, who's going to be a really good player, but they had just taken another excellent player in Jalen Walker. And so everybody was kind of scratching their heads. Why did you go 2 edges in the first round? So that's one reason they got a C+ there. Any thoughts
The
about why?
defense is so bad that they have to rebuild it.
You think that's why they did that? They just wanted to get
Yeah.
the bookends?
They just you start building it with the defensive line first.
But they had to give up 3 picks. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a mistake.
We'll see if it works out. But Malachi Starks, the safety, goes to Baltimore. Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle, to the Lions. Josh Connolly, is a really good player. He's an offensive tackle to the Washington Commanders. It's going to be the guy to Jaden Daniels' left for a long time. Maxwell Hairston, cornerback, to the Bills. Jihad Campbell, linebacker, to the Eagles. This was really interesting. Eagles were sitting in 32, and they traded up one spot with the Chiefs to go from 32 to 31 to go get this guy Campbell. Not sure why they did
That
that.
means the Chiefs were going to take him.
You think? Well, then why would the Chiefs trade it?
Because they didn't love him that much.
It just didn't make any sense. And then they Chiefs did what they had to do, which is go get a tackle. Their offensive line was not great last year.
Yeah.
What is your overall thought about this first round? Who do you think did well? Who do you think didn't do so well? What were some of the things you noticed?
I tend to agree with a lot of the pundits. I'm hearing that the Giants did pretty well here.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a lot of paying the bills, so to speak, with getting your offensive line shored up so that everything else
Offensive
can
line,
work.
defensive line, edge. Yeah, we talked about it. This was kind of
Yeah.
the Lions draft. That's what it
Yeah.
feels
A lot of it.
yeah, like 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 picks were all line. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it really was the, lunch pail draft, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Interesting here, the first round picks by colleges, Ohio State had 4 in the first round, and Michigan, Georgia, Texas, 3, and then, Penn State, Oregon, Alabama, and Ole Miss, 2 each. So you can really see where all the talent is concentrated in college football.
I mean, it's going to get more and more extreme too with the way NILs forcing the collectives to go to fewer and fewer schools. I think it's going to be more top heavy than it's ever been over the next 5 years.
I mean, you have 4 first-round picks. You have 12 guys go in the first 3 rounds, Ohio State
Yeah.
did. 12?
I think it's going to get down to you're not going to see very many players from Boise State or
Yeah.
North Carolina or Kentucky. You're not going to see those teams in there at all soon.
So the concentration of talent's gonna get more and
It's
more
going to
in
get
those
more
rounds.
intensely, yeah, unless they make changes.
Mhm. That's right. Well, I think, a lot of these teams did really, really well. Again, it just felt like a solid draft. Everybody working on their needs, everyone kind of
Yeah.
pretty much filling their needs. There were a couple of head scratchers, the Travis Hunter to Jacksonville and giving up a first-round pick, I'm not sure about that. And the Falcon one made no sense. Why you traded up and gave away 3 picks to go get a second edge rusher, but I guess they just are that desperate for pass rushers
Yeah.
in the NFC. Looking at the second round, you see here, Browns had 2 picks in the first 4 in the second round. They went ahead and got a linebacker and a running back, Judkins. So the Browns felt like they addressed 2 of their needs there. The Seahawks go ahead and get Emanwari, who's a really great safety, probably the best safety in this draft. You have your Dolphins go get an offensive guard in Savanea, one of the better guards on the board. So that was a really good pick for them, I think. Travion Henderson then goes a couple picks later to the Patriots. I think that's going to be a fantastic fit. I just can imagine that new regime in New England with Travion Henderson in the backfield. The Bears add another receiver to an already crowded receiver room that's getting more crowded in Luther Burden. That was, I thought, a really good pick. And of course, they already added their tight end. And then, of course, maybe the most surprising pick in the second round was Tyler Show of Louisville goes to the
Yeah.
New Orleans Saints to become their quarterback of the future.
I think that was a good example of where this draft's just not quite as heavy and talented.
That's right. Absolutely agreed. Another pick I wanted to point out, my Panthers went for Nick Scarton. They knew that they wanted an edge. Everyone thought they were going to get in the first round. They went ahead and got a really solid pass rusher in the second round. So I was real happy about that.
Yeah, it's a good pick.
Absolutely. Yep. And then another one I really was happy about was the Washington Commanders go and get who may be the second best cornerback in the draft after Travis Hunter, and that's Trey Amos. He's a ball hawk. He's a really great tackler around the edge. He can actually do corner blitzes. He's going to be a really solid addition for them. Yeah. You see, they gave that pick an A+. So to get him that late.
Yeah,
Any
that was a good pick.
any overall thoughts about the second round?
Second round, I don't know, a lot of good value there. A much lower likelihood of a bust, but because
I
there's
think
not
so
as much
too.
riding on a second round pick, but you can still really get a talented player who's going to be with you a long time.
And these are mostly starters. I mean, you're still in the
Yeah,
starter
I think
territory.
these are all 80% of them starters, maybe.
Mhm. You see the 2 elite running backs there from Ohio State.
Yeah,
And I was hearing somebody the other day saying, "Don't worry about Ohio State. They have 2 5-star running backs coming in." I was like, "Oh my god." So anybody who's worried about their running back room in Columbus. Don't worry about it too much.
No.
And there's a picture there of Tyler Show, probably the biggest surprise pick in the second round. Goes third quarterback off the board. We'll see if he's ready for this moment. It's really going to be interesting to see.
He might not be. He just needs some time,
He was good this year, but I never saw him going this high. I mean, 40th pick in the draft.
Yeah.
He really had
There
quite a
was a real
rise.
premium on quarterbacks this year.
That's right. So looking at the AFC teams in terms of the ranks, this is the PFF grades. You can see the A teams out of the AFC were Baltimore, Kansas City, Raiders, Titans, and Patriots. Those are your 5 that got A grades. Any thoughts about those? Do you agree, disagree?
I don't know that I think Cleveland's in the C+ range.
Yeah. I don't know. I think people feel like they had good picks, but not, huge impact picks.
Yeah,
They
home runs.
could have had Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
They could have had an earlier quarterback, but waited to the third round to get Dylan Gabriel. I don't know.
Right.
I agree with you. I think C+ is a little bit low for Cleveland. I think they did
It's
a
a
little
little
better.
low.
Yeah, I
Maybe
would
a
agree with
solid
that.
B.
What do you think of the Dolphins as a B?
It's okay.
You agree with that?
Yeah. Got a few position needs taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're
A
just
lot
building.
depends on who they're going to trade away in the next few weeks.
That's right. I think these 5 teams definitely improved. I think out of all these teams, the teams that improved the most, probably the Titans and the Patriots. They probably had the most room to grow anyway. So we'll see. We'll see if either of those teams can be knocking on the door of a playoff berth or maybe getting close. So looking at the NFC teams, there were 5 teams with A grades, several of them A+. It was the Panthers, the Eagles, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Cowboys. Those are your 5 best. Any thoughts there?
I do think Dallas did pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Panthers did pretty well too.
Yeah. The C- for the Vikings and the D for the 49ers.
Yeah, that's rough.
I could not believe that. They have one of the best GMs in football, and
Yeah,
they had a very head-scratching draft,
they did.
not seeming to address any of their needs. Either one of those teams did.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, and the Lions with a B- draft too, which in a really good organization. I think the Commanders did pretty solid. The Eagles, the rich get richer. They always seem to have these really solid drafts every year. And one of the reasons they're, right at the top of the NFC every year. This will be interesting to see.
You know, it's one cool thing that the Eagles do. They stay with the big time programs. They don't fool around with a really good guy from a mid-major or whatever smaller school. They want Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame guys. That's it.
That's true.
They think there's less risk.
That's very true. I'm excited to see if some of these A teams are really going to fulfill what we think, and then some of these lower teams, if they really are going to slip. I think the 49ers are going to take a step back.
By the way, I don't think Atlanta is an A-. I think they're like a C.
Well, they tried to address the defense, which is what we told them to do last year. And yet they still have other needs that they didn't address. So you're right. I'd put them maybe a B-.
I'm putting them a C.
Some of that range. C+ for the Saints. That was kind of interesting. I guess they didn't like Tyler Show and some of the other picks they made. So, this is all, it's going to be proven out over the next, year or two. Let's take a look at the Panthers draft. You had McMillan, Skirton, those first 2 picks. They also got another edge rusher in Umanulin. You had Ransom, the safety, who was a really highly ranked safety. They got him in the relatively lower rounds, which was a really good pick. Trevor Etienne, the running back. I think that was a really good pick in the 4th round.
Yeah.
Cam Jackson, defensive tackle. Mitchell Evans, who's a tight end. So they got another pass catcher for Young. And of course, they're trying to get guys who are 6'5", 6'6", because he's so short that it's much easier to hit these bigger targets. And then they went and got a really interesting receiver in the 7th round, Jimmy Horn, who was one of Shadeur's favorite targets for Colorado. And nobody really talks about Horn because he was on a team with all these stars, but he had a really solid year this year. Might be able to get something out of that 7th round pick.
Yeah.
And then this great quote from Travis Hunter about McMillan, their wide receiver. He said, he was the toughest receiver I ever went against. You can do it all. You got speed, you got hands, you got toughness. You never let anybody get off your game. So that's pretty high praise from Travis Hunter. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really cool.
Overall thoughts about the Panthers draft?
I think he's got such a high skill level that he can appreciate the skill level that he has to cover, thinking of it like a wide receiver. So that is high praise. I mean, that really speaks.
What do you think about this theory about they're going to get McMillan and they're going to get Mitchell Evans, the tight end, and Jimmy Horn from Colorado, all these guys who are like, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and the idea being that, Young is a shorter guy and he needs taller guys with big wingspan to be able to hit. You think that's true?
Makes sense, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, really, really happy with their A+ draft. We'll see if it comes true. Let's look at Washington. They only had 5 picks. They got a B+. They had traded some of them away. They got Connerly Jr. is a really fantastic player. They're going to have him at left tackle for a long time. Trey Amos, the second best cornerback in the draft. So that was really a need for them, a guy they can put in there as a lockdown guy against these great teams in their division. Jalen Lane at wide receiver. It's going to be a solid contributor. They got a linebacker in Medrano, and then they got a running back in Krosky Merritt, who they think is actually going to be one of the steals of the draft. They got him in the very late rounds. Any thoughts about the Commanders and the use of their 5 picks?
I think they got a lot better in some real position group need areas. It's not hard when you get it going like they have with their rookie quarterback this last year. People want to go play there. So
you're just adding pieces at that point
just
because
adding,
you're already
you're
good.
building around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of these
look
were real
good.
needs. They needed a tackle for sure, so they got that. They needed a lockdown corner. They got that. And then
Yep.
these other 3 were just, additional pieces you can add for depth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they had a pretty solid draft. Looking at Miami with Kenneth Grant, the big tackle, they want him to be the run stuffer. He's also going to be kind of a disruptor in the backfield. They got the Savania guy at offensive line. That was a really good pick for Tua.
Mhm.
Jordan Phillips is a defensive tackle, but they said he can also pass rush. He can play both positions. So he's kind of flexible from the Terps.
Yeah.
Jason Marshall, a cornerback from Florida Gators. Dante Trader, a safety. They got Gordon, a running back from Oregon State. He might have a real nice kind of career, even though he's a late draft pick. Quinn Ewers, the 7th round pick, and then they got Zeke Biggers, who's a defensive tackle. So they went mostly defense, it looks like to me. Is that what you think they should have done?
Yeah, that's what they needed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid draft for the Dolphins. Maybe not an A draft,
Yeah,
but
addressed their needs more than a
Mhm.
lot of other teams could have with those same picks.
I like their lines after this particular
Yeah.
draft. So they addressed them both. You got 3 defensive tackles.
Yeah. Smart.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the memes here. We talked about Quinn Ewers going from an $8 million NIL deal to he's going to make $800K as a rookie. So again, like you said, maybe it's not about the money for him. Maybe he just was ready for the opportunity.
He's
and
betting on himself.
betting on himself. And if it works, if he ends up starting for the Dolphins in a year or 2, he'll make up the salary in the future.
Oh, yeah.
So source was that Restrepo signed with the Titans as well as an undrafted free agent. Of course, he was Cam Ward's favorite receiver last year. I really like this signing. They didn't have to spend a draft pick on him.
Yeah.
This is where he wanted to go because he wanted to play with his quarterback. What are your thoughts about Restrepo going there?
That's a great pickup. He's a playmaker. He's a nightmare to cover.
And they need players like this. They need playmakers, in
Yeah.
Tennessee. So, yeah, I really like that pickup. Don't have to
Yeah.
use a draft pick. So this was interesting. I'm starting to wonder why everyone listens to Mel Kiper, because he's just always wrong. This is what he said here. He said, if Jimmy Clausen is not a successful quarterback in the NFL, I'm done. That's it. I'm out. And, of course, we know he was one of the biggest busts of all time.
Yeah.
So
Kinda was.
how has this guy made a career out of the NFL draft when he is 90% of the time is wrong on these kind of guys?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
Early
just
on, he got involved, and he got the reputation that he was an expert,
expert, yeah.
and then he just hung on to that.
And by the way, his opinion often doesn't line up with the guys who are actually paid to do this, the GMs. So, who really are doing the evaluations. So, I don't know. I like him and I like watching him, but I really take everything he says with a grain of salt because he's almost always wrong. So, here's another one he did a couple of years back. He had Patrick Mahomes as the 5th best quarterback available. He had Trubisky, Kaiser, Deshaun Watson, and Luke Falk all ahead of Patrick Mahomes. This is Mel Kiper.
Hindsight's painful.
I know. Mitch Trubisky. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's not an exact science. I give him a little bit of a break there, but this was a huge miss. Let's be honest. Kaiser at number 2.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. So the Browns QB room needs its own reality TV show.
It does.
Yeah, you know how they have those ESPN and HBO shows? They really should do it. It'd be kind of fun to watch. These 5 guys all competing for 3 spots. It'd be fun and entertaining, I think, for NFL fans. So Shadeur Sanders, this is from Colin Cowherd. From a talent perspective, he was a 2nd or 3rd round pick, according to Colin. His cons are he's undersized, underweight, weaker arm, no mobility. He's an older player, 24, 25 years old, holds onto the football too long, has publicly thrown teammates under the bus, very outspoken. Dad was his only coach in high school and college, and his dad's kind of a helicopter dad. So those are all the cons. Of course, some of the pros, he is he's very articulate, has good work ethic, understands football. Apparently he processes at the line very well. So do you think this is a pretty balanced analysis of Shadeur and maybe why he fell?
I think that he definitely has a lot of good intangibles, and I think he's going to be a decent quarterback in this league. I think the league had to decide, do we think he's going to become a starter or is he going to be a backup?
Or is he a fringe starter in like 3 or 4 years? That's what I think they
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He shouldn't start at all this year, but
I mean, he's going to be 25 during the year. So I
Yeah.
mean, you wait 3, 4 years, he's almost 30. So I don't know. We'll see. I think this is a pretty good reason why he fell on this breakdown about what his cons are. So this was interesting a couple of years ago. I love what the Browns have done this offseason, but if I'm a young QB, ain't no way I'm going to Cleveland. I would pull an Eli Manning if possible. So it's interesting. He says that, and then his son goes to Cleveland in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Kind
I
of
bet
ironic.
if he could take that back, he would.
He probably would. Yeah. I would pull an Eli Manning, he says. So this is interesting. When Myles Garrett said the Browns had a clear plan at quarterback, I can't imagine it was keep Deshaun Watson, trade for Kenny Pickett, sign Joe Flacco, and then draft Dylan Gabriel and Shadeur Sanders.
That's pretty funny.
I don't think that's what Myles Garrett was really talking about having a pure plan for quarterback. Nobody expected this. The league done messed up, said Dion. So do you think he's going to step out of his son's shadow now? You think he's going to kind of
Maybe.
back off and let Shadeur and Shiloh kind of show their wares? And
I don't really know how he's going to play it from here.
I think he needs to step aside and let them, grow into pros. Give
Yeah.
them, fatherly advice on the side, but don't be public about it, I think. So this was interesting. Shadeur Sanders' draft stock in jeopardy after insisting on playing Settlers of Catan during NFL interviews. Apparently, this was a very odd situation he did with several teams that really were interested in him. He forced them to play this board game with him instead of answering questions about football. So how much do you think these kind of odd behaviors really contributed to it?
I think it contributed a lot. I think that any weirdness out of your quarterback gets magnified. I think if Cam Newton had been a wide receiver, it wouldn't have been a big deal. You're the face of the franchise when you're the starting quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't exhibit strange behaviors that need to be explained a lot.
Did somebody not tell him that this was a job interview? I mean, he shows up with his hat backwards. He shows up not in professional dress, not in a suit. He shows up with Settlers of Catan board game. And then he tells them, I'm not answering any questions about football. Let's play a game in a job interview.
I think he's been getting really bad advice.
Oh my God. I mean, could it be any worse? It's just, it's a shame. I think he could be a really good talent, but he just
I think
really,
I think he's a good quarterback. I just think that there's too much smoke around him, too much weirdness.
he just really botched this whole process.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. All right. Well, we have a 2-part subscriber challenge tonight to close out the episode. The first one is who will have the most successful career? This is tough because, as you can see, we had a total of 13 quarterbacks go in this draft. We had Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Tyler Show, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, Shadeur Sanders, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Riley Leonard, Graham Mertz, Cam Miller, Curtis Rourke, and Quinn Ewers. All those guys went to a team this year. So, Robbie, think about this, man, because this will come back to haunt us if we choose incorrectly. Who's going to have the best and most successful NFL career?
Probably Kyle McCord.
You think?
Yeah.
With the Eagles?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good pick.
Yeah.
I like that. I might surprise you. I think it may be Jalen Milroe. I think he's kind of a sleeper. He's incredibly talented. He's not ready yet. He's kind of a project, but he's a freak athlete. He can run like the wind. And if you get the right guy to shape him, and they've got a really good coaching staff now in Seattle,
Yeah.
you might see him emerge in a year or two
I always liked him.
as a surprising QB. So I think he's kind of my dark horse. And then my deep dark horse, you might see somebody like a Curtis Rourke or a Quinn Ewers have a really good career down the line. I think Cam Ward will have some really nice moments in his first 2 seasons, but I'm really worried that he's joining a really terrible franchise.
Yeah, it's true.
And then Jackson Dart's doing the same. I think the Giants, they tend to kill quarterbacks' careers.
Yeah, it's true.
So I like Jalen Milroe and maybe like a Curtis Rourke, those 2 guys. So guys, drop us a comment who you think is going to have the most successful NFL career out of this group. All right, so our second question is who's the most likely to be the number 1 pick in 2026, next year? This is way too early, but you can see what the odds in Vegas are right now if you went to bet. Arch Manning is plus 200, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, who's the LSU QB, had a real good season last year. Lan Morris Sellers, and Cade Klubnik. Those are your 5 options here. Who do you think will be the most likely to be the number 1 pick in 2026?
I think Arch Manning.
You think Arch Manning?
Yeah.
Reason?
I think he's prepared. He's ready. He's got all the pedigree. He's got resources around him. He's always going to have good players,
And
especially with
Texas,
skill position.
is rolling. You know, it feels like
They're
that
rolling.
franchise is rolling. Yeah, feels like that program is really rolling right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Arch Manning as well because of that reason, because he's at Texas and because Texas has it going. I think you wouldn't be surprised if Texas is in the Final Four again this year in the playoffs.
No, not at all.
Maybe all the way to the final game. Nobody would be surprised by that. I would say Nussmeier's my dark horse. The only reason I think he won't be is because LSU's program has been struggling the last 2 seasons, and I just not sure he's going to get on TV and get enough exposure to be that number 1 pick. But I think he's going to have a solid year.
Yeah.
Those are my 2 guys. So we'll see. Drop us a comment, guys, who you think is going to be number 1 pick next year. All right, Robbie, we're wrapping up the NFL draft, man. Thoughts?
Thought it was a great draft. It was definitely different. It was not a repeat of the year before, nothing like that. But
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of talent in there that's going to really help these teams over the next 2-3 years. You're going to see the talent sort of erupt out of these guys, whether it's offensive lines shored up or defensive lines getting pressure. I think it was a good draft. Definitely think some teams that know what they're doing got better. Some teams are flailing in the dark and picking wrong and all that. But for the most part, I think a lot of teams did well.
I have to say, you and I have always followed the draft pretty closely, but now the fact that we have our own sports podcast and we have all these great listeners, we do an even more deep dive, and it's so much fun now to be able to follow these guys' careers. I mean, even last year's draft, I'm following their careers much more closely than I would have.
Me too.
And so
I want to see if I was right about this guy or that guy.
Right.
Just in my head, I want to see if I saw it correctly.
Yeah, and we're going to see guys in the next 2 years that were drafted in the 6th round as a running back that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden is the next big thing. You know, they're the flavor of the month, and it'll be fun to talk about because we talked about them in the draft preview.
You know what I love doing is going back and saying this quarterback was drafted with, Kenny Pickett and when you see the draft order later on with the benefit of hindsight, it's always interesting.
Were you surprised that 13 quarterbacks got taken in what is supposed to be a weak quarterback draft? Or a lot of these teams just taking flyers for their QB3?
I think they're genuinely trying to shore up their quarterback room. And there was a lot more talent, I think, at quarterback position this year than was projected. Because I think last year, you have to get your quarterback, you have no chance next year. I just don't think that that's accurate.
And I think teams have learned their lesson. They're only going to start the Jaden and the, Cam Wards of the world. They're not going to start guys who are picked in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Teams have learned their lessons, and they're starting to, they'll start Joe Flacco, and they'll let the other guys build and develop behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the teams have learned it the hard way. They've started guys too early, and they've broken them. Washington started Sam Howell all those games, and I think he could have been a really good quarterback, but he was just used too early.
No question.
So, well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. That is a wrap on the draft this year. We head into the rest of the offseason, and we're 2.5 months away from training camp. So we'll be on our way. We got some great programs coming your way, and be looking out for those. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and a shout out to our sponsor for tonight, DraftKings.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Give us some comments. I love to read through them. It's very entertaining. Y'all are very creative out there, and we're really appreciative of your support. And we are very excited to see how these draft picks all play out and all the drama to see if it was worth all this hand wringing. Maybe some of these precipitous falls are the best thing that ever happened to these players. So we'll see.
That's right. That's right. Next week's show, guys, we're going to be talking about a deep dive into the NHL and NBA playoffs. So look forward to that.
It's good
We'll see you
stuff.
guys next time on the Sports Guys. Have a great one.
All right, thanks. See you.